Class 2 and welcome back to another English lesson. Today we are going to be doing quite similar to yesterday. So we're going to be using all of the knowledge we have learned on poetry so far to identify different features within a poem. And you will then be reflecting again, like we did yesterday, on what you liked and disliked about the poem. So I've got a new poem for us to listen to and look at today, and it is called Seal. But before we look at that poem, let's have a look at our learning objective and success criteria. So our learning objective today is to identify features of a poem. Success criteria 1, I can identify features of a poem. Success criteria 2, I can reflect on the poem. And success criteria 3, I can interpret the poem. Now, only those of you that choose to do the red level of challenge today will be meeting success criteria 3, I can interpret a poem. But we will talk more about that in a moment. So as we did yesterday, we will have 3 levels of challenge today. We will have green, orange and red. Green, you will be watching another video after you have watched this one to go through looking for the features of a poem. Orange, you will just use your knowledge that you have learnt previously in lessons and from watching this video to help you with the task. And red, you will have another video that will introduce the challenge to you. Maybe if you were somebody who did orange yesterday, you might want to try and challenge yourself today to do red. Okay, so let's have a look at our poem. Our poem today is called Seal. And I have got a copy of the poem here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to read it to you and then I will go through how we are going to identify the features and what the features are we are going to be identifying. So let's have a look at the poem. Seal. See how he dives from the rocks with a zoom. See how he darts through his watery room. Past crabs and eels and green seaweed. Past fluffs of sandy minnow feed. See how he swims with a swerve and a twist, a flip of the flipper, a flick of the wrist. Quicksilver quick, softer than spray, down he plunges and sweeps away. Before you can think, before you can utter, words like dill pickle and apple butter. Back up he swims, past stingray and shark, out with a zoom, a whoop, a bark. Before you can say whatever you wish, he plops at your side with a mouthful of fish. So, this is a really nice poem and I thought you guys would quite like this one. Again, it's following our lovely theme of animals. So what we're going to do now is we are going to use our knowledge of repetition, alliteration and onomatopoeia to help us find anything we can in this poem. So if we look at our definition of alliteration, we said alliteration is the use of the same letter sound at the start of words near each other. And our example for this one was Fantastic Fox. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab a coloured pencil and we are going to draw our key just like we have previously. So I've picked yellow. I'm going to draw my yellow there. And then next to it, I'm going to write the word alliteration. And I'm doing this in pencil, not in my coloured pencil, just because it makes it neater. Now I'm going to use my yellow pencil and I'm going to go through and I'm going to try and find examples of alliteration. And we said alliteration is the use of the same letter sound at the start of words near each other. So I need to look for words where the same letter is near each other, and that can be, there could be a word in between them or they could be right next to each other. So I'm going to start off looking for words to see if there are any that have the same letter sounds right next to each other. There's one here that I am going to go for, Quicksilver quick. So that's an example of alliteration. Now you will look through the rest of the poem and see if you can find more. And now I'm going to look for some onomatopoeia. Are there any examples of onomatopoeia? Can anybody remember what onomatopoeia is? Onomatopoeia is when a word describes a sound and makes the sound of an object or action. For example, hiss or bar. So let's go through the poem and pick a different colour to look for some onomatopoeia. So I've picked red this time. Again, I draw my key, I write my word, and then I will look through my poem for an example of onomatopoeia, and I can see one here, zoom. Zoom is an example of onomatopoeia because it sounds the same as the object would. So you would look through the rest of the poem for some onomatopoeia. Then we need to look for repetition. So are there any examples of repetition? Well, what did we say repetition was? Repetition is when a certain word, sentence or phrase is written more than once in a poem. Can you see any examples of repetition within this poem? Again, pick a colour and draw your key. Then we will go on to the next thing, and the next thing that we're going to look for is rhyming couplets. Now, we said that a rhyming couplet was 2 lines that complete one thought, and those 2 lines end with a word that has the same ending sound. For example, we could have frog and dog. They both rhyme, and if they were at the end of the words, they would rhyme. So have a look through the poem. Can you see any rhyming couplets? Maybe there aren't any, or maybe there are. The last thing I want you to do is I want you to think, how many stanzas are there in this poem? Now, remember, we said a stanza is a set of lines in a poem grouped together and set apart from other stanzas by a space. So can you see any stanzas in this poem? So try task 2, and you can either use the green level of challenge, which will be a support video to help you if you don't feel that confident to do this by yourself. You can do the orange level of challenge, where you will be doing the work by yourself, just carrying on from what we have been talking about now. Or you could do the red level of challenge, where you will watch another video that I will be recording for you, and it will tell you about how you are going to be interpreting the poem in your red challenge. Okay, so hopefully you have just completed task 2. Now we are going to be looking at the poem again, and we are going to be thinking and reflecting on what we like and dislike about the poem. So hopefully when you looked at task 2, you found examples of alliteration, onomatopoeia and repetition, and you had a look, and did you see how many stanzas there were? There's actually only 1 stanza in this poem. It's just 1 long stanza. But I didn't see any example of rhyming couplets. Did anybody else? No, so basically in this poem, some of the lines do rhyme, but they aren't directly next to each other. So if we look at the top and we listen to the top part, see how he dives from the rocks with a zoom, see how he darts through his watery room. The words zoom and room rhyme, but they aren't lines that are directly next to each other. They've been split apart by another line. So that is an example of rhyme in our poem, but it is not an example of a rhyming couplet. Now let's read the poem again, and I'll talk to you about how we can reflect on the poems. Seal. See how he dives from the rocks with a zoom. See how he darts through his watery room, past crabs and eels and green seaweed, past fluffs of sandy minnow feed. See how he swims with a swerve and a twist, a flip of the flipper, a flick of the wrist, quicksilver quick, softer than spray. Down he plunges and sweeps away. Before you can think, before you can utter words like dill pickle or apple butter. Back up he swims past stingray and shark, out with a zoom, a whoop and a bark. Before you can say whatever you wish, he plops at your side with a mouthful of fish. So, what I'd like you to do now is, just like we did yesterday, you are going to be reflecting on what you thought about this poem. Now, you can present this like you did yesterday, or you can look at another one of my examples of how you might want to present your work, which are on the website. They're exactly the same as they were yesterday. So I want you to have a think. What did you like about the poem? Did you like the pace of it? Did you like some of the words that were used? Did you like some of the alliteration or the onomatopoeia or any repetition that there was? And then I want you to have a think, what didn't you like about the poem? Maybe you didn't like the fact that it was one long stanza, or maybe you didn't like that there wasn't very much alliteration. Then have a think, what was the effect of the alliteration that was used? What was the effect of the repetition that was used in the poem? And what was the effect of the onomatopoeia that was used in the poem? So have a think, what did you like and what did you dislike? Reflect on that and think, I liked this poem because, I disliked this poem because. Once you have done this task, which is task number 3, I'd like you to come back and look at the learning objectives and the success criteria. So our learning objective today was to identify the features of a poem. So I can identify the features of a poem was our first success criteria. And to meet success criteria 1, that was where we did our key and we were looking in our poem and identifying the key features such as alliteration, onomatopoeia and repetition. Success criteria number 2, I can reflect on the poem. Now that is task 3, where we have just reflected on what we liked and disliked about the poem and what we thought about it. Did we like the alliteration, the onomatopoeia, the repetition? What was the effect of those? How did they make us like the poem? And success criteria number 3 would be for those people who did the red challenge when we did task 2. You will have been interpreting the poem, so you will have met success criteria 3, I can interpret the poem. So please, as your final task, could you leave yourself a comment about how you think you've met the success criteria in this lesson, and maybe what you think you could do to make your work even better. You could also watch my short daily poem video. It's only less than a minute and it will just let you hear a new poem and you might enjoy it.